So with Season 7 drawing near, we're getting quite a bit of news coming out of official sources about what's in store for this year of Smite. This is the current schedule for news reveals. This video will cover my thoughts on the Conquest changes, and then I will have other videos coming out soon as the news becomes available for the Odin rework, Bastet rework, Joust changes and all that stuff. Then of course I'll be reviewing the full patch notes and probably playing on some PTS for the new season on January 8th and forward. But for now, let's jump into all this Conquest news and what I think about it. So this intro section is basically a load of corporate speak about why they make changes to Conquest and why they want to solve specific problems. Of course, Conquest changes are important. While solving specific problems is obviously good, I'm the type that actually does like change for change's sake. Yeah, flexibility, hence why I keep saying add more items to increase diversity and balance the items properly. Every build looks the same right now and it's boring, especially for ADCs and mids, jungles kind of as well. So they have some Conquest stat reviews and stuff that I'll just cover quickly before we get into the proper changes. Conquest is the most played game mode in Smite when sorted by actual in-game playtime. Yes, of course, I've been saying this for a long time. Look at my removing game modes video analysis for why that's the case, basically. Conquest is the third most played game mode when sorted by unique players, with Joust at number 1 and Arena at number 2. Once again, my removing game modes video covers all this information if you want an in-depth analysis on this sort of stuff. Arena and Joust are faster and hence they have more unique players and games played, but Conquest has more game time because the games are much longer. Sorting by match count is, in Ajax's opinion, the least accurate way to measure the importance of modes. Yes, obviously. Can you please stop trying to use match count as an accurate measurement when you have game modes with 3v3, game modes with 1v1, game modes with 5v5? It's obviously not an accurate way to measure anything. So looking back at Season 6 Conquest, for me, I feel like Season 6 was good, but didn't really push any boundaries. Like, obviously they added the Totem of Ku, the Primal Fury, and the Oni Fury, which was added some nice depth to Conquest, but for me, I feel like they really could have done a lot more with it, which I'm hoping Season 7 brings. I feel like for me, they were just kind of coasting off of the success of Season 5 with this season, and they didn't really change too much because people liked Season 5 and they didn't want to fuck it up. But on to the Season 7 changes. So, problems to solve, the invade meta. Early invades have one major problem: they break the intended pacing of a match. This strategy immediately raises the stakes, causing winners or losses to be determined too early. This generally results in a stressful experience that feels more influenced by randomness rather than skill. I mean, it's not really randomness, it is skill, but it's skill in a bad way. I really hope they do fix the invade meta. It's extremely fun for about 1% of players and horrible for the 99%. And they do go more in depth later on in this article on how they're actually going to fix that sort of stuff. For me, invades need to be, on average, ineffective. If an invade gives you a higher win rate than not invading, that's a problem. It needs to, on average, lower your win rate to invade to discourage people from doing it, unless they know why they are doing it and are doing it against a specific comp that it works against. This would also help discourage invading in high-stakes competitive games, which is often where invade metas trickle down from into the wider player base. The jungle role and mid role feeling less impactful than other roles. So previous changes to the map combined with meta shifts throughout the year have caused this feeling. Junglers were intentionally nerfed on a few occasions, you're damn right they were, due to the ability to snowball the game. Mid laners have been sharing more and more farm with the rest of their team to adapt to the meta of grouping in their lane. Definitely, there's a lot of grouping in mid lane right now. Although these issues resulted from intended shifts, a new season is always a good time to evaluate roles and attempt to make them feel equally important in the outcome of a match. Obviously, you always want all 5 roles to be equally important, but that never really happens. For me, I kind of disagree with the jungle aspect of this. I feel like jungle still feels like the most influential and ultimately powerful role, at least at the level that I play at. However, mid is definitely a feels bad role right now, as it feels like you can't get farm and you also can't fight because there's always 300 people in and around your lane 24/7, so you just kind of sit there waiting. It's quite boring. Duo lane not at all resembling the support/ADC duo lane. Smite is designed to encourage more rotation, teamfighting and jungling in the early game for all roles, but we still want the roles to meet player expectations. Players strongly expect there to be a viable duo lane in a MOBA, so as pros have continued to shift god/role positions into an unrecognisable state, we will be introducing changes that encourage a return to more familiar territory. So for me, I just think you need to add more either mage supports or more supports that encourage duo laning. Having the only viable supports being Guardians with teamfight focused kits is obviously going to result in teamfight rotation metas. I thought that would be clear to most people. Either rework or add more gods like Afro to try and encourage their viability in support. That's the only way you're going to make support players want to stay in duo lane without completely forcing them to. And the final problem they want to address with the new season is solo laners not being able to kill each other. Solo lane this year was as impactful as ever due to the addition of the Totem of Ku. The problem was that many players, especially on the high end, found that this lane had very little room to flex your skills. I actually disagree, there's a lot of room to flex your skills in solo, I think. Very few solo kills occurred in the early game, resulting in a less exciting experience, that I do agree with though. As a solo main, I definitely agree with most of this. It's boring when the only viable meta stat involves a blessing that makes you invincible to minions, take less damage overall, and gives sustain. It invalidates most sustain-focused gods and damage-focused gods in one item, and it forces a stale meta where it's actually not in your best interest to fight your lane opponent. Right now, you're literally better off clearing and immediately rushing totem, blue buff, back camps, or recalling than actually trying to box the enemy laner. I feel the only time I fight people nowadays in solo is if they're clearly worse than me and I know they're free kills. In an even skill matchup, warrior versus warrior, both with blessing, it should never result in early kills in this solo lane meta, and that's boring. This is why I preferred the starter item system, at least for solo lane. You could go bluestone if you wanted high damage and clear, but sacrifice defense, Death's Toll for great sustain, especially on AA focused warriors, or Mark of the Vanguard for insane tankiness. Combining both tankiness and sustain into one item is stupid. I've hated Warrior's Blessing from the start. So moving on to the actual main changes that they're doing to address these problems, the first one is a new consumable, Hand of the Gods. So the jungle clearing relic is making a return, but this time as a consumable along with some key functionality changes. So the problem being targeted here is the invade meta, but this will also solve a lot of other problems, I think. The goal of this item is to give all roles extra protection against invades. With this item, they can opt to have a safer or quicker early jungle clear instead of additional potions. This consumable deals damage to all jungle monsters in a small area around you, just like the old Hand of the Gods relic did for anyone who played back then. You can only carry one stack of it, it costs 100 gold and doesn't damage enemy camps or jungle bosses, but is increased by Assassin's Blessing, so this is more effective for junglers. And it's also a flat amount that doesn't scale, so it's going to be very powerful in the early game, less powerful in the late game. So the fact that it's a consumable means I already like it. 100 gold feels like too little for me though. Although if Mace is kept at 700 gold, it could force you into other options like Boots or Morningstar in jungle so that you can actually afford this and potions, because this seems like an auto buy for junglers. Getting to mid 5 seconds faster because you have this is huge. Also being a solo main, I'm pretty interested in seeing how this will fare in solo, allowing you to clear your own blue buff. Because as it is right now, there's still no fix for the get to your blue buff or you're stuck at level 1 issue in solo lane. With this, you could clear your own blue buff and the jungler could rush somewhere else like mid camps or red buff instead. Especially since you have more spare gold in solo than other roles currently, due to most people not starting a tier 1 item at a base, they just buy potions and Warrior's Blessing. You could trade out some of those potions for this and get your blue buff immediately. But overall, I really like this being a consumable. It should allow for some pretty crazy theory crafting in the new meta. So the new starter relic, Vision Shard, is basically free wards for everyone. Each player's inactive relic slot, the one that can't be upgraded until you get level 12 obviously, will now start with a shard in its place, which you can place a weak ward on a 120 second cooldown. The goal of this item is to give players more control over their early game experience. With this item, players are less likely to fall victim to risky or aggressive ganks in the early game. It also might help familiarise players more with the joys of warding. Yeah, that will definitely familiarise people with warding because it's free and everyone loves free stuff, as it will be applied to all game modes. That's also good. Although I'm not really sure what would happen in Arena with that, because wards in Arena are pretty much useless. And then once you get to level 12, this goes away, so it's only up until level 12. So you get free wards in the early game, well, free weak wards in the early game. After that, you're going to have to buy wards. The Shard ward looks different and does not change with ward skins, has a smaller radius, lower duration, and provides no gold when killed. It's good that it provides no gold. I'm glad they thought of that, because otherwise we could be in a level 1 sentry ward meta trying to take out people's Vision Shard wards. This is another change that I just love. League of Legends does a similar thing with free shittier wards, but giving players other options to buy better ones. It will hopefully get new players to ward more, even if it is just using this, which is always a good thing. The one negative I can think of with this is the jungler being heavily nerfed in the early game, especially before everyone gets their first back, because normally there would be no wards or very few wards out there before everyone's first back. An early mid rotation from the jungler to gank mid at level 2 or something is probably not going to work anymore if the mid laner uses this free ward tactically. I could also see solo laners and supports maybe warding mid lane or jungle corridors around with their free wards early on, because especially for solo laners, you really don't need wards that early on. No sane jungler goes for a gank on level 2 in solo lane these days, so you can just use your ward elsewhere. New objective, the Jungle Shrine. The Jungle Shrine is a new early game objective located in the area between Yellow Buff and Back Harpies, problems being targeted, jungler impact. The goal of this feature is to add more team-wide impact to the jungle role in the early game. Junglers can't be in every lane at the same time, but now their allies will feel the impact through these gifts of gold. We hope this has similar levels of success that the Totem of Ku had. Yeah, for me this just looks like they're cloning the Totem of Ku into the jungle, which is kinda lazy, so I'm not really sure if I like this too much. I'd prefer they went for something a little more inventive than just, oh, we're going to give more gold to your team just like we did with solo lane. But I guess it's not really a negative change, we'll have to see how it pans out. Speed buff spawning earlier, this camp now spawns at 20 seconds instead of 23. The goal of this feature is to make mid laners, and sometimes junglers, have more time to clear the yellow buff early on before the lane minions meet in mid lane or the harpies spawn. Certain mid-jungle combinations would not possibly be able to kill the camp and still make it to mid lane before any minions are killed. So this is nothing but positive changes. Much like I said earlier with solo laners being dependent on the jungler to get level 2 at their blue buff, mid laners are the same at the speed buff, so fixing this is only going to help the game, I think. I just wish they'd address this exact same problem happening in solo lane, but apparently they don't care about that. So this is a really big one, mid-harpy pathing and XP changes. So this image here basically shows that the Fire Giant side mid-harpies aren't affected at all, that will be as normal. The Gold Fury side mid-harpies are split into two, and this will be two full-size mid-harpies as far as I'm aware, so there is more farm available around the middle of the map, and it's also directed towards each team, so it's much safer for mid laners to get to this farm. I don't really know what to think of this change because it's so drastic. This is really something that's going to need a ton of playtesting for me to decide if I like it or not. It obviously encourages unsafe mid laners like Apwash or Anubis or something, as it gives them a protected path to get some free XP and gold that they didn't have before. And it discourages aggressive mid lane play in the early game because gods like Ullr or Agni that can clear mid camps really fast and contest against the enemy mid won't do as well, because obviously these aren't a neutral objective anymore, you both get one. One thing I can say for sure though is that we've had something similar to this before. There was a map back in closed beta with directional mid camps that were the cooldown buff back then, so we'll see how this pans out. Obviously, this is only one side and it has two camps, but we'll have to see. I'm not really ready to say if I like this change or not yet. So there's new XP camps near duo lane, basically replicated both next to the Gold Fury, one for each team. A new XP camp featuring a single Elder Harpy has been added to both Order side and Chaos side of duo lane. The goal of this feature is to encourage players to stay together on that side of the map by giving them more XP and gold sources. These camps are positioned in the environment right next to the purple camp. These are tanky, hard-hitting monsters that are cleared most easily by a group of 2 players or more. So as much as they're trying to force that this will encourage duo lane and you need 2 players or more, does this really encourage players to stick together? A single Elder Harpy can be easily soloed by an ADC between waves. I think all this is going to do is give more farm to ADCs and give supports even less of a reason to be there because they'll be splitting that farm with their ADC. You would rather just let the ADC get all the farm, get big and carry the game because that's how it's been in the past. As I said earlier, I think bigger changes are needed if you want duo lane to be a proper duo lane. Unless this Harpy is specifically very OP compared to a normal Harpy, this probably won't change anything. Especially once Hunters get their lifesteal online, they can probably solo this camp without even taking damage, so tell me why the support needs to be there for this because I'm confused. Another duo lane change, purple buff now spawns earlier at 20 seconds just like the yellow buff. The goal of this change is to give duo lane a big head start in safe gold and XP. It should make it much less likely that duo lane loses this camp to enemies at the start of the game and encourages 2 players to work together to clear it in time for the minions to meet. So basically we're going back to a jungle start for duo lane. Personally I like this as I prefer that type of gameplay to a lane start which gives advantages to certain gods that have like really good level 1 clear for example. This won't give you level 2 after one wave and purple buff though, you'll still have to wait for the second wave to get level 2. This is more of just a hard way to stop purple invades after wave 1 and wave 2. But to be honest, those small camps that are being added with the one Harpy from earlier are still up for invading between the first waves, so if you have pressure, there's still something you can get. Health pots will no longer stack with Health Chalice. The goal of this change is to prevent tanky gods from bullying everyone in the early game. The ability to double stack heals has helped other early invaders stay alive longer to cause more trouble, and this excess healing makes solo laners much less likely to die early. Not even much less likely to die, it makes you fucking invincible with Warrior's Blessing. This change is both confusing but also good. Most players would assume that you can stack them because they're 2 separate items and it makes sense, but 20 HP per second is pretty insurmountable, especially on top of Warrior's Blessing giving you 40 HP every 10 seconds and whatever sustain your god has. This is a big contributing factor to the solo lane meta being so stagnant in my opinion, so I guess I like this change even though it's confusing as hell. And yeah, I guess it also helps counter invade metas, because people going in with double health pots and stacking them made them pretty much invincible for invades. And a few final changes, so most of these are deliberately vague, and we'll probably get more info on these on the patch notes show, so I won't talk about them here, but here they are for those of you interested in the small things. So most of these changes I think are pretty good. At least they're doing something to address the issues and shake up the meta more so than they did with Season 6, so that's a start. Some highlights here are definitely the Hand of the Gods consumable looks really cool, and the free ward relic should be healthy for the game. And some negative changes that I don't really like would be the new XP camp in duo lane, because I don't think that will actually accomplish what they think it will accomplish, and the fact that they still haven't directly addressed the blue buff level 2 issue in solo lane. I really hope they do that. But that's it from me. If you want to stay up to date on all the other Season 7 news that will be coming out soon, then be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos covering all the god reworks and official patch notes and stuff when they come out. But I'll catch you guys later. Peace.